Hey everybody, Jim Viebrock with Maintenance Minute. I just want to take a minute and encourage those of you who are just starting out in woodworking. It dawned on me recently that not all of you have been exposed to some kind of shop class and may need some help with some basic construction techniques. So today I want to talk about building panels, real wood panels, like this one. And you may wonder why in the world that you would need to do that when they have so many plywoods available today. Well, there are applications where you need a real wood panel and a plywood panel is not going to work. For example, a cutting board, okay? Or maybe you're going to build a fancy dresser like this one and want a real wood panel as the side panels or for drawer sides or something like that. So there's a lot of applications where a real wood panel is desired over a plywood panel. And the construction techniques for those are very basic, and they're the same for every panel you do, regardless of how big it is or how thick it is. So let's get started, and let me show you how to build what we're going to call a panel using this miniature cutting board. Okay, let's take a minute and talk about some of the tools you'll need to make a panel, okay? This is some scrap lumber I put together. This demonstration is going to be very similar to that if you were building like a cutting board or something. And I've got a buddy who built some amazing cutting boards, by the way. So once you build a couple of these, then you can add a few things to it, like inlays, stuff like that. But we're not going to cover that today. We're going to talk about building the basic panel or cutting board, whatever you want to talk it. So I've got some scrap pieces here, so they're not very pretty, but the principles of putting these together are going to be the same. So if this is your first panel that you put together, I'm going to assume that you don't have a tool called a joiner, and that's going to be the tool that really makes these edges perfect, okay? But you can build these things without a joiner. It's just as you get better at woodworking, that's going to be one of the tools that you add later, okay? The glues today are very good. They bond very well, and the clamps today are very good, and they'll clamp very well. So you can really force this stuff together even without a perfect edge. So all I did for these was cut these edges on my table saw. They are straight. If you end up with a wave in it, you want to straighten that out. But so you need straight edges. And then I'm going to talk about the end grain a little bit in more detail here in a minute. So just watch your end grains and how the cup is on those when you put it together. Now, there's another little tool here that you can buy at your big box retailer. Not very expensive, but will help a lot in keeping your panels straight and flat if they're 3/4 of an inch thick or more, okay? So for example, this is called a biscuit joint, okay? These are called biscuits. And I have a biscuit joiner here. I'm going to demonstrate in just a minute. These go in there like that, and you put one on each side, and they go in here like this, and they will actually help keep the face of your material pretty close to being the same. I mean, it'll help, and it'll hold this and make a very strong joint as well. So if you have material that's 3/4 of an inch or thicker, I strongly suggest you put a biscuit joint in there, or you'll do it some kind of a tongue and groove advanced joint later. But for starting right now, you can do it without the biscuit joiner to learn how to do it, but at some point, spend the money and get you a biscuit joiner and some biscuits, okay? So I'm going to show you how to put those together here real quick, and then we're going to talk about the panel itself. So before we get started, let's talk about glue for a minute. How does the glue work? The glues today are amazing. What happens is you spread that liquid down through there along your edge here, and when you press it together, it forces that glue into the fibers of the board. Then when it dries, it bonds, and the glue is actually stronger than most woods. So if you tried to break that, you're going to break the board way before you break the joint, because that glue welds that together and makes those fibers really, really strong. That's how the glues work today. So the tighter you can get it, not only is it the seam prettier, but the bond will be better as well. That's why I have a specific type of clamp that I prefer. This is called a bar clamp. I prefer these probably mostly because I was just raised on them. What I love about a bar clamp is with this type of a handle, I can really put a lot of pressure on these, and I can really crank my panels together very, very tightly. Because of that, always make your panels a little bit wider than your finished product so that you can trim that off later. As you crank these clamps down, you're going to put a little indentation on the side of the boards, and I'll show you that later, that you're going to have to get rid of. And if that's your finished side, then that's not going to work for you. So always make your panels a little bit wider and longer so that you can trim them up to make your final size. Okay, these are very popular today. These are called quick clamps. As of this video shooting, I don't have any sponsorship. So the stuff you see laying around here are just things that I use because I like them and that they're readily available. So there's no endorsements going on here. These are just products that I know and like. What I like about this style of clamp is it's very good for attaching something to a table and holding it. It's a good extra hand. What I don't like about these is I don't have the physical strength to be able to pull them down enough to get near the foot-pound pressure as I can with one of these. You'll see other types too. There are all kinds of clamps out there. Find what's available for you, find what you like, and just start collecting them. As you do more woodworking, it's amazing how many clamps you'll end up needing over time. I have several hundred of these in various lengths and sizes. Okay, so what I want to do now is just demonstrate real quickly the jointer, the biscuit joiner, and how that works and how I use it. So I'm just going to take the regular speed square, and what you want to do is on your seam of two different boards, I'm going to try to do this where you can see it. On the seam of two different boards, you're going to make a mark that goes across, and there's a line on your biscuit joiner that you're going to line up to these lines so that your biscuit is centered amongst those two lines. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to turn around. Now biscuit joiners can be dangerous, so be sure and hold on to your work well. This is the biscuit joiner, and I'm just going to take this, line it up, and there's number one. Now I keep a screwdriver close by to keep that debris out of there. Now we'll do the other one. Can't hardly see that, but here we go. Okay, there's that. And like always, use safety glasses, please. And the biscuit just simply goes in there. It slips right in there like this. And when you line those two lines back up, like this, then that's going to fit in there just perfect. Now, when you put your glue down through there, you're going to take your glue along here and fill a good amount inside that slot and along here. Now, this is going to make this unbelievably strong. This is it's almost like a mortise and tendon joint, but it's not quite as good as a mortise and tendon joint. And I got tons of videos where I do this. I love mortise and tendon joints. Okay, so the next thing that you want to do then is make sure that your pieces are going to line up. And you're going to do the biscuits. I just did one. Depending on how wide your project is, you put them every 6 inches or so across through here, okay? And then you're going to do them in every piece going across. That's going to hold that all together. But now, for the rest of this demonstration, I'm going to show you that just how to glue it without. So this one's going to be without. I've cleaned that joint up with the table saw, or that edge up with my table saw. So there we go. I've got my ends lined up, and I'm going to just bring it over here to my clamps. Let me just bring this back to center for you. So I got some clamps, and we're going to take this and we're going to get this ready to go. I'm going to take my biscuits out. Okay, so we're going to take our glue. Whoops. Unfortunately, I buy glue, by the way, by the gallon. It's way cheaper that way. And then I keep one of these bottles around for the application, and I really should have done this ahead of time. I've got a little dried glue, there it comes, on the end there. I use this all the time. This is a production shop. Okay, so now, here we go. Now we're ready to go. And I'm going to go along here, and I'm going to put a healthy bead. I'm going to go right down inside the biscuit joint there and smear that around. I use the tip of the deal to smear it around. A lot of people use their fingers. Either way is completely acceptable. And here's the other side. Now you can glue both sides of your joint if you want to. Some do, so it's just going to give you more squeeze out. But I definitely put glue in both sides of the biscuit joint. Okay. We'll go along here. Clean this up. Put a healthy amount of glue on there. And you want just enough to where it squeezes out. More than that is a waste. We're just going to put this on here real quick. Again, I'm getting it down in that other joint deal I did ahead of time. Okay. You put your biscuits in there on one side. Okay. Turn these over. Line them back up with your marks. Gluing can be awkward. And you want to square your project up as you go. Just work. And if you did lines for your biscuit joints, that'll help line all of that up. Okay, I'm going to have way too much glue here, but that's a good demonstration for you. Okay, you get that nice and tight, then you take a glue rag and you're going to wipe off the excess glue or the squeeze out. There are people who will tell you that the wiping this off like this will soften that joint. I've never had any troubles with that. I've been doing woodworking for 40 years. I've seen no evidence at all that wiping the top of the board off softens that joint in any way, shape, or form. That water's not penetrating down into that wood. It's just simply wiping it off. And if it bothers you, take a dry rag and wipe it off after that. Now, if you get this tight enough, or you've got a bit of a warp in your boards, you can take another clamp, put it on the top like this, and crank it down as well. Now what that's going to do, and you can put pressure on it like that, it'll help that lay flat. You want this panel to be flat all the way across there. That's why we take the end grains and make them opposing so that it helps it want to lay flat. Now, if you use the biscuits in this case, it's going to hold that to where you'll have very little ridges here, if at all. And it'll be way easier to sand, and you'll lose less material in the sanding process or the planing process if you use those biscuits, because your panel will be flat across the top. Okay, leave this in the clamps for at least 30 minutes. I like to leave them overnight. Sometimes that's not an option, but at least 30 minutes, maybe an hour before you take them out and start doing anything, and they'll be pretty much set to go. The longer you leave them in there, the tighter that bond's going to be. We've got other projects that we use panels for, so keep watching the channel. I appreciate you watching the channel. Please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching.